Giving Pat Kelsey a raise was 100% the right decision.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this Friday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the University of Louisville, third year hosting this show, and I want to take the time to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast, free and available on all streaming services, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, 5 days a week, covering your team every day. On Thursday, it was confirmed that Pat Kelsey is getting a raise, pretty significant raise, and it was 100% the right decision from Josh Hurd and the athletics administration. We'll explain why coming up here shortly, and we'll get into the details of that raise and extension technically. We'll continue along in our, let's call it, developmental series where we are discussing what we want to see from a certain player between this past season and next season. The conversation was about Kenai Roots on yesterday's show. We're going to explain what we want to see from James Scott heading into his junior season in the Cardinals program. And more news on Thursday, the rumored non-conference game against Indiana for next season has been confirmed. Pat Kelsey and Darian DeVries, Volume 2, in Indianapolis next December. We'll discuss at the end of the show. And look, I promise that we're going to get into football talk. The spring game is tonight. Make it out if you can. I will be out there, so hope to see some of you all out there as well. We'll recap the spring game next week. We'll talk about what the Cardinals need in the spring portal and much more. It was a busy Thursday for Josh Hurd and the Athletics Association, giving out multiple contract extensions to various University of Louisville athletics head coaches. Pat Kelsey was amongst the discussion, and it resulted in a raise and extension for the Cardinals head coach. Pretty obvious that he exceeded expectations in year one, getting 27 wins, number 2 seed in the ACC, and getting back to the NCAA tournament. The extension, however, was really sort of a formality because it was going to happen regardless. Instead of his contract ending in 2029, it now is extended. It now is extended until March 15, 2030. That is the result of getting to the NCAA tournament in his first 3 seasons. It triggered an automatic 1-year contract extension. So it reads as an extension, but it was always going to come. It was just, getting that, formality out of the way. The main thing was the raise. Pat Kelsey gets a basically $1 million per year raise as a result of what he did this past season. He's now up to $3.3 million annually. And there are a couple things that could also impact that number. You look at some of the other verbiage in the contract regarding the performance bonuses. The bonuses stayed the same with Conference Coach of the Year. He got $25,000 for getting that this season. And a lot of these remain the same. $50,000 for making the NCAA tournament as an at-large. He received that after this season as well. The biggest difference now is in the new proposed contract, there are base increases once Louisville were to hit the second weekend, like NCAA Tournament Sweet 16 appearance, $250,000 base increase. Elite 8 is $300,000 base increase. Final Four is $400,000. Championship is $500,000. And these base salary increases go into effect on April 1st of the season in which the team appears in the NCAA tournament as applicable. A total of 2 base salary incentives may be achieved in the term. So it's not cumulative. It's not something that he can rack up every single year. And it's just something that can add on. NCAA Sweet 16 appearance Yeah, it's after the third time he reaches it would be 100,000. The final four would be 250,000, and national championship 400,000. So all you really need to know here is that the further the Cardinals go, the more Pat Kelsey's going to get paid, as he should. In the discussion, let's talk about both things here. Number one, should he have gotten a raise? Number two, what about the dollar figure that he got? Well, technically, if you go back to listen to what I said about a month ago, and I mentioned this, it felt like not many more were talking about it. And I'm not saying that to make me feel special or anything. It just felt like I was like, man, am I on an island here? But I was like, you know what? If Pat Kelsey's going to say never delay gratitude, Louisville should follow suit. And they did. And they gave Pat Kelsey the raise. I am 100% on board with being proactive. Pat Kelsey exceeded expectations. He coached his tail off this year. ACC was down, sure, but they ran the conference. They won many games by double digits, dealt with a ton of adversity with 2 starters going down, and you made it back to the NCAA tournament. You recruited this roster in just a couple months, and you've recruited the high school ranks well, and also the portal. Like, I don't know what more he has to show to justify it in the minds of some. Some think that it's too soon. Like, yeah, I want to see him do it another season. And I get that. I disagree, but I respect the opinion. Like, I don't feel like I need to see a second season. I feel like Pat Kelsey's the guy. There are 2 things that I wanted to see. Number one, I didn't want to give him a raise until he got back to the NCAA tournament. Boom, done that. Number 2, I want to see how he recruited the portal, and I wanted to see how he fared in high school recruiting. Well, really good portal class in his first offseason, and then this one, which is technically his first full offseason. I guess last year's is this past year year 0? Is that how that works? Because I'm just playing. I mean, even now he's dominating the transfer portal. Louisville still has the number 1 transfer portal class. You got Michael Brown Jr., the number 1 point guard. You got Sananda Frew, one of the best international prospects in the high school class. Like, Kelsey is recruiting his tail off. And he's recruiting the portal well. So you couple that with the NCAA tournament appearance and the on-court success, and look, he's the guy. It's better to be proactive, because what you don't want to happen is, and I'm not saying that this was going to be the case, but just trying to think of things logically and from like a humanities standpoint. You have this great year. Maybe you approach Louisville and say, hey, maybe it's time to talk about a raise. And they're like, we need to see a little bit more. We'll talk about it after next season. And maybe there's some bad there's some I won't say bad vibes, but Louisville's operating in good faith. Let's look at this positively. Louisville operated in good faith. They said, you know what, we think you're the guy. We're not going to delay gratitude. We're going to take that deal that you signed, which was a $2.3 million a year, basically prove it deal, and you've proved it. So we're going to bump it up. And another reason why I like this is because you look at the monetary amount. He's up to it's basically, call it 3.3, but it's like 3.367 or something. It's essentially a $1 million raise per season. So it's significant, but there's still room to grow, right? There's still room to grow. You've given him that raise. You have $1 million a season added onto your deal. I think that that's pretty good, because in the grand scheme, yes, there was a good amount of success year 1. Yes, you made the tournament, but that's where it stopped. Like, there hasn't been any tournament success. So I actually applaud Josh Hurd for saying, you know what, we're going to give you the raise, but we're going to still give us some wiggle room in the future. And assuming that you do make these runs in the tournament and you start making the second weekend, and hopefully you start getting to Final Fours, and hopefully you give Louisville that 4th national championship, then we can negotiate a higher base salary and continue to go up. This is a step in the right direction if you are both sides. This is just, I think, a double down of good faith for Louisville. They went to Kelsey and said, hey, look, you've got to prove it that you're the guy. and they stood on their word. He proved it to an extent, right? I mean, there's still a lot to go. The revival's not complete. It's just getting started. But he started it and built the foundation. And Louisville said, we're going to reward you for your efforts. And what I feel like that does is operating in good faith. With the way that the coaching carousel works nowadays, I'm not saying that Pat Kelsey would leave, but with how wonky these coaching changes are and seeing guys leaving, you're like, he left for where? You just never know. So who knows? Next offseason, if Pat Kelsey was still making $2.3 million, maybe another school comes by and they're like, hey, look, are you potentially looking elsewhere? Maybe he's inclined to listen to him. This is just hypothetical, so don't get too upset. I'm just covering all bases here. I think Louisville reduces that possibility because, you've said, you know what? We don't have the tournament win yet, but we're going to operate under good faith. And that's sort of the mantra, is never delaying gratitude. And it's, of course, reciprocated at this time. So love this. Absolutely love it. 100% justified, 100% on board. I like the decision. I like the monetary value that Josh Hurd and company gave him. And I think it just gives him more room to exceed and earn more money. There's no reason to throw $5 million at him this year. He still has to win tournament games. The revival's going great. There's still a long ways to go. So I like this move. Continuing on in the basketball talk, we're having this series on discussing each individual returning player's development that we want to see from this year to next year. Kenai Roots, I think, has a ton of potential. Another player that I think has a ton of potential is James Scott. I really liked what I saw from him in his first year in the ACC. There are some things that he definitely needs to improve on, and we'll discuss when we come back on this Friday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress, so you can just focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. There's no waiting, wondering, or worries. Now, this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Card Nation, want to take the time again to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on the YouTube channel. Give us your thoughts in the comments below. We're continuing on in this, I'll call it, development series. We talked about what we want to see from Kenai Roots next season on yesterday's show. We're going to discuss James Scott today. And Scott had a decent first season at the College of Charleston. Appeared in 35 games, started 4 of them, played 16 minutes a game, averaged 5 points and 3 rebounds. Not bad. Really effective. A lot of his offense came from around the rim. I was a little bit worried coming into the season because, was one of the youngest freshmen in the class, and now was one of the youngest sophomores at Louisville, will be one of the youngest juniors. Didn't have any ACC experience, raw prospect with an enormous amount of potential and athleticism and length, but needs to add some weight to his frame. 6'11", 220 pounds. Need to add some weight to his frame. Also just needed to polish his skill set on both ends of the floor. He got to Louisville and immediately had to deal with some adversity because, well, Kason Pryor went down, and that was going to be one of the interior threats. So looking at this roster, the only true interior threat that you had outside of James Scott was Frank Anselm Ebay, and he was a end of the bench reserve minutes type guy. Didn't play much at all. So Scott this year, I think, grew up before our eyes. He started 31 of the 35 games, averaged 24 minutes a night, 7.1 points a game on 76% shooting, averaged 6.1 rebounds a game as well, 1.4 assists, and 0.9 blocks. 16.7% from three. He only shot a couple. And 43.5% from the free throw line on 2 attempts. Now, James Scott, you knew what you were going to get on a nightly basis. Offensively, it was being a rim runner, a guy that could run the floor really well, run in transition, a guy that was an instant lob threat, did a great job of finishing above the rim. But that's pretty much where the scoring stopped, was around the rim. Most of his offense was dunks and like putbacks right by the rim. He impressed me with his ability to be a capable and able passer at the top of the key, being able to operate on those delayed handoffs and being able to initiate some offense. Well, at the end of the year, teams started using his lack of range against the Cardinals and started doubling down in the high post. Now, again, I'm really impressed with what I saw from James Scott. I thought that he did everything that I hoped for and more. I thought he was really good for his role. And knowing that he wasn't going to be an all-conference player in his first season at Louisville, like he's playing better competition, he's still a younger player, he is still developing his skill set. This offseason coming up is going to be extremely key because the Cardinals need him, along with Ali Khalifa and Sananda Farouk, to step up at that 5 spot. I don't know what the minutes distribution is going to look like, but in the case of James Scott, I think offensively, he needs to get there needs to be a semblance of a post game there. I'm not saying he has to be Hakeem Olajuwon with all of the dream shakes and the amazing footwork, but if he can become a player to where you can throw him the ball down on the block and he can do a jump hook or spin to the basket and finish around the rim and create his own offense, I think that that's going to help Louisville tremendously because it gives Louisville another scorer that's not just in the lob threat department. Am I getting a little greedy here in suggesting that I want to see James Scott start to develop that 15-footer like we have seen many Louisville players do in the past? I hope not. I would like to see that, but I think that he's growing as a passer. The game is slowing down for him. He's obviously uber athletic. He's got a ton of length. Is great at running the floor. It's just he has to start developing more of an offensive game that's not catching lobs. Also needs to improve from the free throw line. We hear about how good he is at free throws in practice, but that has to translate to a game setting. So I want to see that number get above 60% next year. I don't think that's too much to ask for. Even if it's the same amount of sample size, getting up to 60% definitely would help this team because even if he develops that post game, you know he's probably going to get fouled more. So I think that the sky's the limit for him, but Louisville needs him to develop a little bit more of that scoring repertoire. On defense, I felt like he grew up more and more throughout the season, was getting pushed around early on, held his ground more often than not later on in the season, but when he played the bulkier big men, some of the best big men in the conference, things got a little rough, and he gave up, not just him, the Louisville defense gave up some more offensive rebounds than they should have. And possibly some of that is the Cardinals lacking size. Like James Scott was the true interior presence. And outside of that, it was Frank Ansel Mibe. And then you played small ball with Javon Hadley, Boubacar Traore, Noah Waterman, and more. Has to be, I think he needs to add a little bit more strength, add some more weight, add some more muscle, because that's going to help him to bang down low. I love the potential as a perimeter defender, has done a great job of sort of hedging those screens and rolling back to the man cutting to the basket. And it was really helpful for the Cardinals defense if he can improve as a rim protector, because right now I look at this roster and I don't see one. I think Sananda Fru has the potential to be a good rim protector, but there's a lot of unknowns there because he hasn't played a minute of college basketball yet. Ali Khalifa is not a rim protector. James Scott, I think, has the potential and the physical tools to be one. It's just a matter of getting more comfortable as the anchor of that defense in the middle and adding some more weight. So I have some high hopes for James Scott, who, as one of the youngest sophomores in the class, averaged 7 and 6 in his first season in ACC play. I look forward to seeing that growth because he's one of the hardest workers. Pat Kelsey and company say that all the time about he's one of the hardest workers. He's a sponge, and there's no doubt that he's going to put that work in the offseason, and I am really intrigued to see what he's going to look like next season as a junior. So more basketball talk when we come back from break. The game against Indiana is finalized. Louisville will square off with the Hoosiers in early December. Why I like this and more coming up on the final segment of the show. April has kicked off in an incredible way. Viewership is continuing to grow and grow, and that is a testament to how well or how much you all have been engaged, and I'm so appreciative of you all for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Share the podcast with your friends and family, and have them recommend some topics, and we'll discuss. Final segment of the show. We talked earlier this week about why I would really like to see a Louisville and St. John's home and home, and that was in the name of, number one, nostalgia. But number two, you're building up that non-conference schedule because you're going to be perceived as a good team and you're going to get a great opportunity or opportunities, plural, to prove it in the non-conference schedule. You've got Tennessee finalized on the schedule. You've got Kentucky, and you're waiting to see who else is finalized. Well, this one had been rumored for a long time, but it is finally confirmed. According to Jeff Goodman in a tweet, Louisville will play Indiana on December 6th at Gainbridge Arena in Indianapolis, source told the Field of 68. Love this non-conference matchup between Pat Kelsey and the Cardinals, and new IU coach Darian DeVries and the Hoosiers should be a terrific atmosphere. Jeff, I could not agree more. The only thing that I would have potentially changed, number one, I would have made it a home and home. I want to see Indiana play at the Yum Center. I want to see Louisville play in Assembly Hall. We talk about nostalgia. These two, I wouldn't really consider them rivals because they don't play all that much, but it's sort of that unspoken rivalry that, like, yeah, I mean, these two fan bases and programs don't really like each other. I wouldn't say that there's like a scalding hate, but it's clear that there's no love lost for either side. And the first matchup between Kelsey and DeVries was great in the battle for Atlantis between Louisville and West Virginia. The Cardinals won it in overtime, and we'll get volume 2. I think that IU hired the right guy. Darian is an incredible coach. He's doing some work in the portal. Excited to see what that Hoosier roster is going to look like, but I think it's going to be a pretty formidable opponent here in early December. So I would have liked to see a home and home. Another thing here is I don't know what it is, but it feels like every time Louisville and Indiana play, like it's always in Indianapolis. It's always in Indianapolis for whatever reason. And I'm not going to sit here and complain about it. I'm not one of those people that's saying, well, why do we have to play so close to the other school? But I mean, it is what it is, man. I'm not really losing too much sleep over it. I mean, it's not too terribly far in terms of driving distance. Like, I think Bloomington to Indianapolis is like an hour, and Louisville to Indianapolis, depending on where you're at, it's like an hour 30 to 2 hours. But Indianapolis is predominantly IU fans, so you're playing a game in Hoosier country. And I would have been okay with that. Like, don't get me wrong, I am perfectly okay with that. You know, I'm kind of spitballing here, and I would, if you're like making one of those like home and home, like neutral sites, I think that would have been kind of neat. But where would you have the other neutral site? Like, you're not going to play the neutral site game in Rupp Arena or anything like that, although that would be hilarious. I don't know how possible this even is, and maybe it's not a great thing, but man, at some point, Louisville needs to have a vintage throwback game in Freedom Hall. It needs to happen. It's been far too long. Bellarmine's no longer playing at Freedom Hall. They're back at Knights Hall. I know it's a smaller venue, a little outdated. Louisville needs to play one game in Freedom Hall, whether it's a non-conference game, whether it's a conference game, whether it's against a mid-major. I don't care. Just make it happen. The vibes need it. Nostalgia's on the line here, guys. But no. Back to the topic at hand. Sorry for getting off on that tangent. I'm okay with this. It's always fun going up to Indianapolis and playing in the Pacers arena. I think that Louisville's going to travel well, and there's going to be some red in that arena too. It's a good atmosphere to play in. Louisville, Indiana always lives up to the hype. It never disappoints. But again, we're going back to the real reason why this makes sense and why I like it the most, and that is you are loading up your non-conference schedule. There is a sector of this fan base that says, you know what, I would rather get wins over surefire opponents than potentially losing more games against top competition. Well, we saw this year, and I know that the precedents seemingly change every year, but the committee awarded the strength of schedule. You could have 39 losses, but if you play 39 quad one teams, then you were viewed better than a team that was, 29-5. Of course, I'm just making stuff up on the fly, but the merit remains the same. Committee awards playing tough teams, and Louisville played the tough teams last year. Unfortunately, it came at the beginning point of the year where the Cardinals were still trying to piece things together, and they dealt with all that injury adversity along the way. This year, they're going to have some more opportunities. I don't know who's been confirmed and who's not. I know you're playing Kentucky. I know you're playing Tennessee. I know you're playing Indiana. There's the rumor with St. John's. It hasn't been finalized yet. I heard Cincinnati as a possible team that's out there, but the Bearcats don't seem like they're going to be as great of an opponent. I'd like to see Louisville add another solid team. Maybe one that the Cardinals don't play a ton, but could boost the resume because you need it. The ACC is going to be one of those TBD type leagues where you just don't know how good they are until late December when you see what they've done against non-conference opponents. But I like this because it gives the Cardinals another opportunity to justify whatever preseason ranking they get and just continue to confirm to the national landscape that, yes, this is a good team. They've taken the next step forward because perception matters. You know, my old boss at my old day job used to tell me, you know, the truth could be something, and it was a sales role for background. The truth could be something, but what the customer perceives is the reality. And I thought, and I was like, although it might not be fair, it's the truth. Life's not fair. The world's not fair, and you have to adjust. So whether or not it's right and fair that the perception of a team in the NCAA sort of triumphs over how good the team actually is, that's just the way things are. And if you are perceived, if you are perceived as a good team, I think you're going to get more opportunities to get higher seeding. So love this. Love Pat Kelsey's raise. Excited to watch James Scott grow his game and much more. Spring game tonight. Hopefully I'll see some of y'all. If you're going to be at the game, comment down below. We'll talk some football when we come back next week. Everyone have a great day. Have a great weekend. We'll see you right back here coming up soon. Go Cards.